Hello, moot.aesthetik here, and I am back after a long periodic time to review the Blends palette by Blend Bunny Cosmetics. I discovered this palette some time ago. I follow Blend Bunny Cosmetics, or rather Blend Bunny on Instagram. I now follow Blend Bunny Cosmetics as well, but I followed Blend Bunny and I liked the looks that she did. You know, I liked the blends and all that stuff. And so she announced that she would be releasing an eyeshadow palette. And I thought, well, someone who does really great looks, I'd imagine they'd have a great kind of taste in eyeshadow. And then I saw the palette. And then I said, no, I have more than enough rainbow palettes than, I just have way more rainbow palettes than I need. I'm trying to cycle through the ones that I have now. I have just rainbow vomit everywhere as it stands. And so I didn't need another rainbow palette. And so that was going to be that. And then the spirit of impulsivity came down upon me, and she came down upon me hard. And she said, you know, the little bit of pocket change that you have, instead of putting it towards debt or towards something else, you know, let's spend it on something. Let's buy more makeup. It's not like we have way more than we actually need. Let's buy something else. So I was kind of browsing and looking through things, and I happened across the Blends palette again, or it just popped into my head. I'm not sure exactly. I just know I went from saying I wasn't going to get the palette to clicking complete order, and yeah, I have it. I believe I've had it for at least a month now. So this is the palette here in the packaging. Ignore some of that fading. That's just somehow I stored it. That is not how it came. I think this is actually nice packaging, as hopefully you can see with that lighting, that kind of holographic shift going on with the lettering is really nice. Here is the back of the packaging, which also features that. The one thing I will say I don't like about this packaging is that it does not include the ingredients lists on the packaging. That is such a nuisance to me. It's only included on the sleeve or the box that it comes in. Oh, I think it was a sleeve. The sleeve that it comes in. I don't want to have to keep the sleeve to know what the ingredients were, especially if there are formulation changes. So I will knock off some points for that. But otherwise, I really like the packaging. I like the logo. I think this is nice. And then we get into the actual eyeshadow palette, and this is the beauty here. There are 30 matte shades. This retails for $39, at least at the time of purchase when I got it, and it is cruelty-free and vegan, and you're supposed to be able to hold it for at least 2 years, or 24 months at least here. So that is the palette. And now the selling point or the conceit behind this palette, besides the fact that it's a rainbow palette, which initially kind of put me off, the reason behind this arrangement was that it was supposed to enable people to better be able to select the next shade in a blend, right? So to be able to go from the darkest shade, for example, the shade Spellbound, and know which shades to then use to continue that blend and get a nice gradient. I initially kind of scoffed at that because I thought most palettes have some sort of arrangement in that way, at least within the different color families. Like even if it's somewhat scattered, usually there's kind of the dark and the light. So I thought, especially rainbow palettes, it's often how they're set up. For example, the Painter's palette from Sample Beauty, right? It has those different color arrangements. But where this one differs is not only, and this is just my thoughts on it, I haven't, so not only is it referring to going from the darkest to the lightest, but it's actually meant to go across color families. So the colors in here are a little different than I typically expect in a rainbow palette. For example, this mid-tone yellow here called Wildflower, it is much more on the green side. I filmed this previously and did some swatches, and so that's what you're seeing. But that was not a great swatch. That was not the palette's fault for that one. Well, maybe so. It's not really showing up that well, but it definitely leans more on the green side of things with this palette. I don't know. Is that a little better? I don't know what's going on with that, but it leans a little more on the green side, and I believe that's so that way these shades work really well with these greens, right? So they're kind of in between to work well with all the other colors. These pinks are a lot cooler, and so they're intended to work better with these purples here. So all of the shades, you know, not all of them, but there's certain ones that are slightly different than maybe I would anticipate, maybe some of you would anticipate, but it's meant to allow you to jump between color families. So if I'm in the blues and I want to get to this pink, right, and go here, maybe blend it out with this purple, and then go into this pink, knowing that this pink was designed to work with that purple. So it's an interesting idea. Now, how does it work in practice? So the first thing we'll talk about is the pigmentation. And I think this look, I don't know if it's abundantly clear. I don't know if the lighting is doing it justice, but this is the look that I came up with the palette. The pigmentation is there. If you had any questions, concerns, worries, anything about this palette related to pigmentation, let me be the first to tell you, ignore that struggle swatch. I don't know how much of it is the yellow, because I do run into that kind of issue with yellows, or if it's from me cleaning off my arm earlier with oil, but the pigmentation is here. Like, make no mistakes, it's here. The pigment is here. It is here in spades. So if your worry is about whether or not it is pigmented, put those worries to rest. It is definitely a pigmented palette. I don't think there was a single shade that I encountered that I was like, oh wow, this is kind of dull. All of them were true to color, true to form. Just bringing this back in. My arm's kind of tired holding it, but yeah, all these colors were true to form. I didn't run into any particular issues with any of them. I've tried, I want to say 80–90% of the palette. There's only a couple that I haven't tried. Intuition, I want to play with. I also think, no? Maybe Serendipity I haven't as well. Everything else in here, I believe I have tried within my time with this palette, so I think I'm pretty seasoned on it. So pigmentation, not an issue. In terms of the color matrix mentioned earlier, I do actually find it kind of useful. I think if you have a base idea for an eye look, but you don't know where to take it, it could be nice having them arranged in a way where you can go, well, what if I went here? Oh, I can jump to that shade knowing that there's a corresponding shade within there. And they're not always exact. For example, Spellbound is significantly deeper than Submerged, or, you know, Vexed and Lux, which, I mean, red and green, those are complementary colors. So, I mean, that would be tricky just in general, trying to get those to work together. Could be mistaken, I'm pretty sure those are, yeah, red and green are complementary colors, so they cancel each other out. So, but yeah, the color matrix I do find kind of interesting. You know, once I saw it and started playing with it, I was like, I could see how that could be useful for someone. If you are someone just in general who struggles with that, you know, this layout would be incredibly helpful. But if you're someone who just maybe you are pretty good at deciding the next color you want to use in a blend, but maybe not across color families, that can be beneficial for you. Yeah, so those are the things I liked about it, the pigmentation and the way that it's set up. One of the things that I did not like about it, and probably my biggest gripe, is for a palette called the Blends, I find it really, I wouldn't say really difficult, not really difficult. I do run into difficulty blending with this eyeshadow palette. I do find that when I place a color down and then I try to go over it to blend it out, instead of just developing that gradient, something that I would find with like my, you know, a number of other palettes that I own, I can get that nice kind of gradient. It just kind of becomes muddy. I ran into that issue trying to blend these greens. So I started off with this deep green, which isn't really that deep, but Luxe. And then I tried to blend it out with Remedy, and I found Remedy kind of got lost within Luxe. And so I had to go back in with more of Remedy, and it still wasn't there. And then I added Wildflower. I'm not sure how much all of those are coming off on camera, but that's kind of what I was running into. Just making sure, because I know the lighting kind of shifts. I just want to make sure you all can actually see the merchandise. So yeah, I did run into some issues blending the shades. Just making sure my lighting doesn't topple. Blending the shades, that was, that's probably the biggest deterrent for me for this palette, because the pigmentation is so good, and I do like the whole color matrix setup, albeit, you know, I'm a little disappointed with the blues. They're not bad blues, there's a certain kind of blue that I love. I love more of like a sky blue, and you don't really get that in here. I know that kind of looks like it, but it's definitely more of a teal. And that's more of a minor gripe. That's nothing really against the palette itself. That's more my own taste, especially given that I already probably have 50.1, maybe 2 million versions of sky blue. I can survive not having it in this palette, getting a little versatility. I will say these pastels are also additions to this palette too. But yes, I ran into issues with blending. When I ran into the greens, I ran into the same issues with Submerged in 32. There isn't enough of a distinction between them. Like, clearly 32 is lighter, but it looks, the distinction I think is more pronounced on camera than at least what I'm seeing. So I find that they kind of got muddied, but that's been my experience in general with this palette. There are some shades in here that do run a bit patchy. That didn't make any sense. That can be a bit patchy. For example, Chase. Chase is what I used here. And this is a redo of a look that I did a couple days ago, and I initially tried to film a tutorial, and it looked more pigmented on the eye in that look, but this is definitely a very, very pigmented pink, I guess like a magenta. And while it is very, very pigmented, it just goes everywhere and looks really splotchy, and so you have to kind of fix it, and then I would go to do the rest of my makeup or blend other things out, and then I would find that it's kind of disappearing, and so I'd have to go back in with more of the shade, and that was kind of frustrating. It was a little disappointing. I do run into that issue in general with those kind of hot pink shades, but it is incredibly, just look at that. Oh my God, just look at that. Let me give you some other colors that probably make some sense. It's blue here, a little bit of Submerged. So some of the colors, that red, oh my God, look how neon that is. Same thing with that pink. So that red is Self-Love. It looks like there. You have the mid-tone blue Chance, which definitely leans a little bit more purple. Let me see if these will show up here. No, I might like that. Let's do it on my hand. Oh no, I did moisturize my hands. Probably won't show up on my hands. Let's see if I can do there. Okay. I do that. Oh, there we go. Okay. I'm sure you're thinking those are the best swatches. Actually, the fourth one didn't show up very much, but just to give you an idea of what it looks like, especially on a deeper, richer skin tone. But yeah, I did run into some issues with Chase. I also ran into a similar issue with Depth here. It does provide a nice richness on the eye, but it can go patchy. In terms of standout shades that I loved, Spellbound and Bewitched. These fucking shades here, these two, oh my God. Oh my God. Let me have a little microfiber towel to kind of get that off a little bit. But let's use the other hand. That's what we'll do. So we have Spellbound, so silky. Like a lot of the other shadows in here run drier. I don't know why, but these shades, in my experience, most palettes nail these well. This is no exception. These are fucking awesome. Very deep, very rich. If you are, ooh, that actually came out very well. Very deep, rich. Look at that blue. Look, baby, look at that blue. So good. Loved that shade. Self-Love, very intense red, as I showed you. What I do find with this red, and I run into that with a lot of reds, is that they go on really well, and then over time they tend to lose. Look at that. Look at that. It's like a neon red. It's intense. Intense. I do like it. It does lose some of that vibrancy over time, and I don't mean just like with normal wear, but like not long after applying it, which is kind of an issue, but so yeah, those are some standout shades. Cream and Sugar is another one. I don't really use white like that, but I will say this white is definitely opaque, very buildable. So I think for that to be a single swipe, that's not bad. I did use my thumb, so naturally there's a bit more pressure, but I think that's not bad for a white. On the flip side though, you have the shade Nevermore. If this palette, oh my God, it would have gained so many experience points for me, so many in this battle, if it had just had like a deep, rich black. The black in here is, on me, is more of like a deep kind of gray tone. And you might be saying, could you show me instead of just tell me? Okay, I will do that for you. It's all about you. Yeah, you see how it's not really a black? It's more of like a really deep gray. That was super disappointing. I can never have enough black eyeshadows, especially like really deep, rich ones. For me, they're essential in getting that kind of nice, intense outer corner look. A lot of the deeper browns and palettes even depth tend to not really give it to me. Like depth is fine in conjunction with the black, right? I mean, it's not bad by itself, but it's definitely not like just as impactful as I want it to be. So again, hopefully those swatches kind of give you an idea. What were any other issues that I ran into? Really the big one is just the blending and the patchiness of some of the shades. It's not a bad palette. With a little bit of work, you definitely can get a really nice blend. I don't think this is half bad. My lighting isn't the greatest, so I don't think it's doing justice. And this is slightly different than the one that I posted on Instagram. This is not bad. 30 matte shades, $39, cruelty-free and vegan. I think if you do not already own a rainbow palette, this could be a nice option for you. Is it my favorite eyeshadow formula? No, it is not. I have used much, much worse. But I wouldn't say that this is a phenomenal formula in terms of playing with it. I think you can get a great look out of it. And you know, I really like the look that I came up with. I feel like I'm not giving you the effect. Is that better? I feel like you're not getting the fantasy. But yeah, that's kind of where things are. If you don't own a rainbow palette, I definitely don't think it's a bad option. It is small in form factor, so it's something you could easily slip into a bag and like a travel bag and be on your way. It's a very thin palette. I think you get a decent amount of product, and I have like played with this quite a bit, and I have yet to hit pan on anything, so I will give it that. Initially, I wasn't as drawn to it just because of those middle rows, those pastel shades. Don't really use pastels like that. I think on me, they just tend to read more ashy, but these do work. You do want to go in hard a little bit with them. I find they're set up in a way, if you just go on with a little bit, they can look kind of ashy. I think they're really probably intended in the blends palette to just blend out edges more than be used individually. But if you do want to, you definitely are going to want to pack it on. My inner corners are the shade Giggle. So just overall, I'm using Luxe and Remedy, Submerged in 32. I'm also using Bubble Bath. I have on Bewitched, Signs, Chase, and Giggle. And then I also put Bewitched and Chase on the bottom lash line. I'm not sure how much that shows up. I did go in with a little bit of Nevermore too, but again, Nevermore didn't really show up too much for me. So those are my thoughts on the palette. I don't think it's a bad palette. I think I don't know. I feel like it's not a bad palette. I think it's a good palette. Is it great? No. I think if you are someone who doesn't own a rainbow palette, or your rainbow palettes are kind of that's gonna blow your mind. The blends palette, I think, is just gonna be like, oh my goodness, the pigmentation and the looks you can do. But if you have rainbow palettes that, like for example, the Carnival XL, oh, I would reach for the Carnival XL over the blends palette. But I don't know how fair of a comparison that is too. That's an almost $60 eyeshadow palette, and this one is only $40. So I'm not sure if that's a great comparison to make. I do compare it to, however, this palette. This is the Sample Beauty Painters palette. It also has 30 shades, a very similar form factor. Just in case someone was looking at this one or comparing the two, blends palette is slightly shorter. and slightly less wide. So you can see the painter's palette coming through there. And then height-wise, I don't know if you can see that. So between the two of these, I find myself reaching for this one more. I like the color story better of this palette, but yeah, like that's the blue that I love. That's my baby, that's my heart. So yeah, but I do find I reach for this one more. This one kind of suffers from an issue where blending is hard, but it's because the colors are pigmented until you sweep them on and you start to blend them out and they kind of fade away. Whereas this one, they kind of don't want to move, so I had to really go in. So that's my biggest caveat with it. Hopefully that was illuminating for you. If you have any questions regarding my experience with this palette, or are you interested in a tutorial on this cut crease look, or just another look in general, or whatever you want to throw into the void, just comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and until next time, bye.